jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Welcome back to the show. We got Kyle Hickman. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How about you?
No complaints, brother. No, at least none that are going to be listed on here.
Okay, good. Let's keep that between you and I.
Let's not bitch. Let's not complain. Let's talk about people we love. So we are talking about the alternative heavy and hard rock band that is Chevelle. Or is it like tomato, Chevelle versus Chevelle?
Quite the pick. Quite the pick. That's what the people came for, so we're going to give them what they came for.
So, how did you get into this very catchy group?
Well, if I turn back the clock, I first got into Chevelle probably when I was in high school, probably 8th or 9th grade. So I probably got turned on to them in around 2002. So probably right after Wonder What's Next released. While I wish I could say I was there for their early days of Point Number One, I wasn't. Right. So a lot of bands, you don't stumble upon them until their second album, because their first album is just setting the tone to get a record deal or something like that. So
true. So true.
Yeah.
Because
with a lot of the radio friendly hits from Wonder What's Next, that's what I got into them, and probably most folks got into them first time.
Absolutely. Send the Pain Below and the Red still get played at morning or evening hours, I notice, and I had iTunes at that point, so I went back and listened to their 99 debut album, and I think they were just interesting in that just depending on the tune, some of it could be easier listening versus harder listening, and everyone, I think, has heard their songs regardless of whether they know about them or not. They kind of don't really have a distinctive look if you actually look at who they actually look like. That, like, you would just think they're just normal everyday jocks, at the store. And so I think,
yeah, they're not terribly grungy looking, right? Like
Right.
a lot of other musicians in their genre, they're pretty they're pretty vanilla looking comparatively.
and I guess that's served them well. They have, because they haven't been harassed by the paparazzi or anything that we know of. They you don't know about anything that would make them unpleasant to talk to or anything. So
No, and I mean, they've had good success, because as I look at Spotify, the Red's been played over 161 million times. So,
nice.
Some bands you stumble upon where it's only, a couple 100,000 plays. I mean, their
That's
top two combined, the two songs you mentioned, Red and Send the Pain Below, combined for almost 250,000, about 250,000 plays. So, or 250 million plays. So they've done pretty well for themselves in terms of notoriety, almost under the table. Like, they're not a band that people talk about a lot, but clearly people like their stuff.
I'm with you. It seems like a lot of them have heard of them. It's just there's just so much competition at that point, especially in the 2000s. And you're more up to date on their newest record. The most I saw was that they had announced that they were going to tour with Korn, who they had toured with before.
Yeah. So what's funny is the tour, I think, starts in early March. So I don't know when this hits, but
I will try to get it.
So, I don't know if you want to drop it with the start of their tour date.
Drop
but,
it like it's hot.
they go on the tour with Korn in March, and I saw they're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is like an hour and 40 minutes from me. I was interested, but I don't really want to pay the money to go see Korn. Nothing against Korn, but I don't really want to pay to see Korn. And at this point in my adult life, and be around the crowd who goes to see Korn. So they're
kind of ruined their career with the dubstep, and Chevelle has yet to do dubstep or any other thing that just makes them not sound like their signature sound. So,
I saw Chevelle. The last time I saw Chevelle was in 2014. I saw them in Connecticut, and they were the headliner, which is what I wanted. I wanted to go to a show where they were the headliner. Versus, I find a lot of times, with these new metal, cock rock kind of bands, they'll end up being supporting, and then I'll skip whoever it was. So, for example, Alter Bridge, one of my favorite bands, probably my favorite band. And a couple of years ago, I saw them in Columbus, Ohio.
Sweet.
But they were playing with Skillet, and Skillet's okay. I just have no interest in seeing Skillet more than a couple songs. So, I went and saw Alter Bridge, and then I stayed for 2 songs, and then I left, even though I paid for the whole
Skillet's
thing.
Good for a Christian rock band.
But you can only handle so much
exactly
of that type of Christian rock, which is interesting because as I was researching Chevelle, did you know that their first contract was with a Christian recording label?
I did not know that, but that makes sense because it seems like they found a lot of independent labels and they were just slowly just getting in with some of the bigger record producers. So that totally makes sense to me. And it's tough to be pigeonholed and try to say, hey, I need a gig that gets me in the door, but I'm not what they say I am on the cover. I just
Well, and so is a contemporary Christian music label, and the guys. So for the listeners who don't know much about Chevelle, they're from Illinois. They were formed in '95. It's 3 brothers. Originally, Pete and Sam, the drummer.
7 brothers total, but only 3 of them got into music.
the Lefflers is their last name. But Pete and Sam, the singer and the drummer, started together with a different guy named Matt Scott. And then a year later, they replaced it with one of the other brothers, Joe, in '96. So it's 3 brothers, blood brothers. And they do have faith, but their music isn't Christian rock. It's just funny that their first ever music label was with a contemporary Christian music label.
Oh, totally. Live About has a few very blunt interviews with them, kind of describing their style. With a Trouble Bunch music interview, Sam was quoted as saying, "I guess it would be like a slow, heavy drill," describing their sound.
When they got in a bunch of trouble, probably mid 2000s. I'm not going to say a bunch of trouble. They got some controversy with some of the Christian publications because they went on tour with Ozzy and all that, and the devil related aspects of it. You know what I mean? So it's just that's where it gets mucky with Christian rock.
If I had a Christian fighting a demon, would that be okay? It's
as long as Jesus is very white and has a beard on and very Judeo-Christian, then you're good to go. not Middle Eastern or light brown like he probably was.
He can't karate kick 4 horsemen into hell or anything. No, can't do that. But
it's interesting when you dig into their early, just them performing and becoming a band. It's a 3-piece band. You don't see many 3-piece bands. I mean, Rush, you could probably name
usually it's 5-7 people and
at least 4, right? At least 4.
That's all you need. But I've never seen a 3-man group.
I mean, they have a touring basis. They've had touring basis forever, so they're not really a 3-person group, right? They've got their 4th, but they're definitely marketed as the 3 brothers in a 3-piece. I mean, Rush is the only other 3-person band that I can really think of right now off the top of my head.
Rush is a good contrast because they were another one who kind of just slipped through the cracks and just became big over time. And I find it even funnier how Sam cites that Joe was tempted to leave the band, and he was like, the only way he's staying home is if I fire him.
Exactly. No, you're in the Blood Brothers. You're on. So what do you think about their? Because I read that they chose Chevelle because they were big car enthusiasts. I think the whole family was.
Yeah, it's the first thing that comes up if you even type in the word.
Right.
I wasn't familiar with that car.
So that was my thought too, of you name a band Chevelle, that's got to hurt your search engine optimization, your SEO, your brand over time, because everybody that looks up your band is going to find car stuff. So like it's a nice ode to your first love of vehicles, but it really hurts your brand awareness when you're named after a car, a very popular car.
Absolutely. Unless you want to be continually mistaken in search engine results and discovered that way, it makes me wonder, was that their marketing model?
Well, and when the internet really didn't blow up until around 99, 2000, right? Like really after 9/11 is when things started to kick into gear. So I don't even think they had that foresight about people searching them online. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So, I think that's important context. Yeah, it was like that's when it was just like travel blogs and stuff. There, some chat rooms. The internet wasn't what it was today. So I'm not going to blame them. I'm not going to go back and yell at them for something they really had. They're not Al Gore. You know what I mean? But hindsight's 2020 on that one, right? Like pick a name that isn't commonly misconstrued with a vehicle, because it probably hurt their brand in the long term in terms of awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. It's just me conjecture. That's all that is.
Well, no, I think that's a good segue. He was recently in a 2021 interview comparing himself to Dave Chappelle, where he asked his followers to stop following him, and that kind of made them keep checking them out. It's like, oh, what does that mean? So they did some reverse psychological stuff, according to a spin.
When was that? Like what year did he?
March 2021.
So very recently. Okay.
Yes, but it's all good. I mean, I had the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, and I didn't realize that end song was by them. So I mean, they keep slipping through the cracks.
Self-Destructor. Yeah, that's a fun album, which we can get into. But I don't want to jump straight into Self-Destructor because I think the context of the rest of their career and their albums is probably good fodder for getting to why their latest album is so cool and so innovative comparatively to what they've done before.
Absolutely. So they've been compared to, out of many bands, Tool and
I've seen Helmet is some of the other ones.
Yeah. Helmet, and they've even toured with Filter. Do you consider those worthwhile comparisons, or is that kind of just because it's alternative and they just got thrown in that pigeonhole?
That's a great question because I was reading on that too. I'm like, who do they get compared to all the time? For me, Chevelle has always been a band that had its own unique sound in their genre. But of the three bands you named, Tool is the one that would come to mind the most. I don't know if I think Tool has better arrangements, and I'm not going to say better arrangements.
The scream,
more complex arrangements. Tool has very complex musical arrangements comparatively to Chevelle, which is they have simpler arrangements.
Absolutely.
Their sound has evolved. Their latest album, I think, it gets closer to the level of a Tool, versus a lot of their early stuff, which is more radio play things, which is not terribly complex. It's not built to be that. Versus Tool, outside of Schism and
Tool is kind of
a few others
experimental nightmare fuel, while
exactly
Chevelle is kind of just rage and then put on a show.
It's a great question because I don't think they definitely have influences with Helmet and Tool and maybe like Machine Head too. There's some others in there that you could maybe tie to, but
it's cool.
Their brand of like heavy riffs, what I could tell, and I was watching a lot of reviews and reactions on YouTube by some composers and other folks. The thing that the one guy, the Decomposer Lounge, I love the way he breaks down music. He talks about their mix, right? Their audio mix. Every instrument is pretty clear in their audio mix, whereas a lot of audio mixes you can't really hear the bassist very well, or maybe the vocals are hidden to the background unintentionally, kind of thing. Versus Chevelle's always had this sound that the riffs definitely take the forefront, right? Heavy, think of like Face to the Floor, the Clincher, Jars, like very heavy riffs.
Brutal
but at
stuff.
the same time, you can really pick out the bass guitar in there, and you can pick out the drums really nicely. So whoever their audio engineers have been over the years, props to them.
Absolutely. And I think that's just it. You just need something that is more than just a headbang.
And it's like, how do you narrow them down in a genre, right? Because there was, in their early days, it was like indie rock point number one, right? Like
Mhm.
there were, like a lot of bands are like, it's very experimental. They're playing around. It's unrefined. It's raw, like most bands' first album. By their second and third albums, it's more new metal, right? And that cock rock, I call it cock rock. That's my buddy and I would call it
Cock rock.
Like it's just,
It
like
makes something grow, I guess.
but then as they've transitioned, it's more like post grunge and it gets into more metal, right? Especially their albums starting in like 2014. So La Gargola, even Sci-Fi Crimes is there in 2009, and North Corridor in 2016. A lot heavier of a sound. And then now with Nereadas, it's definitely very different from anything they were doing early on in their career, especially in terms of complexity of their sound.
100%.
So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
All right. Man, oh man.
So what are some, like, what are the go-to Chevelle songs for you? Like the ones that you'll pop on in the background, ones that you enjoy.
There were a few on the 99 album, and since I'm just terrible with the song, remembering songs, but definitely Send the Pain Below, I would hear that remixed a few times, and I would try to get remixes of that one. And but yeah, other than the Red, there was one other one they mentioned on there. And it was
What, from Wonder What's Next?
Yeah, I think it was Wonder.
I mean, that was loaded with great songs.
And
loaded.
But the 99 album, I had at least like two singles on there I would put in a custom playlist before Spotify years. And I just thought, I'm pretty much set for life. I just find it a very overall agreeable music, like you say. And the morphing, like you say, it was kind of going to happen one way or the other. You don't know if it was producer giving notes or them just deciding, hey, we're just as good as everyone else around here. We're not trying to create any kind of rivalry, and what they can do, we can try and do just as good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In every band, their sound evolves over time. The gist that I've gotten from it, I'm not obviously touring with these bands, but from interviews,
totally
it's like, I know, right? It'd be so cool. They just get restless, right? Like you write the same stuff over and over again, it gets boring for them. So they want to evolve. They want to try some new things. It's experimentation. That's what music's all about. What I like about their evolution of sound is it's gotten more mature in a really good way, right? Like their latest album, so Self-Destructor, So Long Mother Earth, Remember When, Peach, like these are songs on the same par of stuff from bands like Tool, where musicians are like, this is good, right? Not just radio play stuff, right?
Yeah, not just the cool thing at the moment. You won't remember. It's pretty epic.
Like it's got their iconic sound, but when you think about like the changes in rhythm, like constant, kind of keeping you on your toes while you listen to the songs. It's got the heavy riff, so it's still got that Chevelle distinct sound to it, but it's gotten complex for good. To the point where I think a lot of musicians are like, holy crap, that latest Chevelle album, they're doing some really good stuff. It's not just radio play,
You know it, man.
So that's been interesting to see. But if you're going back to Wonder What's Next, see that 02 album that put out the Red and Send the Pain Below. It also had some great bangers on it outside of it too. So like Forfeit is a fun one when you just need something like angsty to put on in the background. Forfeit. Like it's angry as hell. Closure is one of my favorite Chevelle songs from that album.
And it was true in that word. It really is like closing out the album.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Comfortable Liar is on that album. You've got Wonder What's Next, the title track, and An Evening with El Diablo's got some really cool bass cuts on it too. So like that album, for being, and Family System, I almost forgot about Family System, for being an album that definitely was built for radio play, it still had a lot of bangers on it, man. It was good. It still holds up pretty well. The Red, not so much, right? Like it's very radio friendly, but
it's very overplayed too.
It is. Yeah. I get, like, if somebody's not really a musician and you want to introduce them to Red and they like radio friendly tunes, then yeah, they'll like it. But the Red's not the first song I would introduce to somebody who is a music aficionado. I would give them something probably from their latest album. I would give them Self-Destructor or So Long Mother Earth.
Absolutely.
But yeah, their sound, just the way it's evolved over the years, is so much fun. Do you want me to talk about any of the other albums?
Absolutely. Just any that just kind of really stand out to you the most.
Okay.
Just from that point on, after that it was
Yeah, we can just go timeline wise. Just kind
Absolutely.
of hit the big one. So I guess that next one was This Type of Thinking Could Do Us in '04, which I'm a big fan of. Again, very radio friendly tunes in them, but if that's what you're into, which I like, good melody and good riffs, it nails it. So The Clincher, Get Some, Vitamin R was their next big single after Wonder What's Next. So
Tug of War and Emotional Drought I thought were fun, but those were just complimentary. They weren't,
Yeah.
like the main that you
Yeah.
gotta listen to.
Like I can still go back to that album and listen to Still Running,
It had
Never Waking Up. And then they had some slow songs like Breach Birth and Bend the Bracket. I heard Bend the Bracket earlier. I'm like, yeah, it's a good little tune. So that album is a solid album, man. I think it's like middle of the road for them because it is pretty radio friendly. I don't think it's this.
The cover kind of
musically,
made sense.
Yeah.
Don't you think? It just got like a patient who looks like they're a walking skeleton. Like that.
Right. And it made sense. Like coming off Wonder What's Next, they got huge commercial appeal. So why not continue taking advantage of that and putting out songs like The Clincher and Vitamin R? Like those were huge hits. And The Clincher is still kind of complex and actually is one that people really enjoy too and give good musical credit for. So that album's fun. I like that album. It's one of my favorite ones if you want the radio side and don't want to think as much, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're engaged, if not getting completely deep, but there is some deepness if you want to actually go around it. But yeah, it's not
if you want to,
right. But it's not. It's just a kind of it's straightforward escapism, is what it is. Really,
Yeah.
It's just
yeah. Chevelle's not a band I've gone to for their deep lyrics, right? Like I love Alter Bridge because their lyrics for me are very meaningful underneath that first layer. Even Rise Against, I'm a big fan of. Very, very socially aware lyrics in a lot of their songs, right? They're talking about freaking New Orleans. They're talking about bullying. They're talking about all kinds of stuff. It's a lot of like stuff from Sam's life, just like talking about his perspective on things, but nothing that you're like, oh man, this is provocative, until you get to Sci-Fi Crimes. And then he starts singing about fucking like aliens and shit. Like it just kind of goes off the rails with Sci-Fi Crimes and the type of content. I mean, one of the songs is called Roswell's Spell. You know what I mean? So like we keep going, but
absolutely. And I think they just didn't want to be. It wasn't just not making it sound the same. I think they just wanted to have a different flow each album.
Yeah, test themselves, right? They know they're gonna have their core audience that will still listen to their stuff, and if they put out a dud, I put that in air quotes, a dud, they still have enough goodwill built to they can come back with their next album and try something a little bit different or go back to the old formula to appease the fans, right? Like you can't do that on the second album, but you can do that on the fifth album, right? Play around with that a little bit.
Yeah.
So like
don't nuke the fridge too early in the game.
Exactly. Right. So what we're 3 in at this point. Yep. So we're 3 in. My favorite album from them is 2007's Vein of Sarah. And that's probably not everybody's popular choice, but when you combine songs like Anti-Saint, I'm coming out of the gate with Anti-Saint, which is heavy and melodic, Brainiac, Safer Waters, Well Enough Alone, The Fad, Paint the Seconds, Midnight to Midnight. I get it. Like top to bottom, that album, it is melodic, so it'll turn off some heavy metal fans, like metal fans at their core. But for me, I think this is the best album top to bottom with what makes Chevelle unique.
I definitely am with you. I had never had an issue with it. I just thought, okay, even if it's repetitive, it's just, again, just nonstop, just non-ending energy. And that's just what I need, whether it's working out in the morning or driving quickly to college or work. That's what it was at that time for me. So I lost track of them around Hats Off to the Bull, and the title track, got a lot of play, but I didn't know they were still going.
Yeah, because like 2009 Sci-Fi Crimes, like we talked about, was a little bit of a departure. There's some good songs on there. Sleep Apnea is really good. Jars is fun. Roswell Spell, This Circus, Mexican Sun, but not at the same level. So I think it started to lose some of the hardcore fans where it got to Hats Off to the Bull in 2011, Face to the Floor. Obviously, when I saw them live, I think that's the song they finished with. I can't remember if they started with it or finished with it, because it's a heavy in person. It's a great concert song to do, because it's so in your face. But I hear you. I think after Hats Off to the Bull, like not a lot of people got onto La Gargola. I mean, I could look at the record sales.
I definitely heard the Take Out the Gunman, but it didn't get as much play, and so I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's not one of my favorite albums. Take Out the Gunman was definitely their radio play song, and there's some good. And Island is good. Ouija Board is decent. Hunter Eats Hunter, it actually smacks pretty hard.
I guess they just got too weird or morbid for some. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is I was researching them. I wanted to know, like, award wise, what have they won awards for over the years? And they've won awards for, of their 9 albums, only 3 of them. And none of this, some of this might surprise you and some of it might not. So not surprisingly, they got a bunch of like music, like Kids' Choice Awards stuff. They got a few of those for Wonder What's Next, right? Because of, the Red and Send the Pain Below. So
Nickelodeon honoring them.
Yeah, I forget the few that I saw, but the one album that's actually gotten like Loudwire Music Awards was La Gargola, because it is so much heavier than the rest of their stuff, and they moved away from a lot of the typical radio play that they had put out previously.
Damn.
So if you ask, I'm guessing if you ask them, which album do you think kind of was your grand experimentation in maturing as a band, that they would probably say La Gargola in 2014. I don't know.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I don't really know. I'm not living in Illinois and dealing with the Lefflers, but that's the only one that's really gotten them any awards appreciation up to this point. Legitimate awards appreciation.
Absolutely. I'm really even surprised that they kind of haven't gotten more appearances in even just casual movie and TV shows. Like, they've appeared on a few movie albums and video game for sports and such. I might have heard them in ATV Off-Road Fury because I was playing that shit a lot. But other than that, not much. It's just like, wow, okay, so maybe they should, I don't know, pick a few more brains and say, hey, feature us on some more,
Well, and they probably needed to, because I read just past March of 2021, so almost a year ago, the band came out and said they basically didn't make any money from the 6 million albums that they've sold, because they signed apparently a terrible contract with their record company before. So that sucks, because that's a lot of albums. It's a lot of plays. They've done pretty well as a band.
You can't get those millions back. You're going to spend $1 million just to get that $1 million back,
Yeah, and I don't think their story is much different than a lot of bands, right? Like, they get sucked in before they really know what's going on. They sign a contract. They're on the road. They're making enough money to get by, but then they realize, oh crap, where's the royalties going for everything we're doing? Not to our pockets, right? And another example of how these labels and companies are just screwing artists over. Yeah, more Chance the Rapper's out there, doing his own thing. I mean, with the recent Spotify, everyone leaving, saying, cease and desist, I think it's going to keep continuing. I think a lot of people are even realizing, since tours have been canceled post-COVID, for some of them, not as brave to storm through. I think it's also just getting to where it's like, okay, I mean, because there is a lot of people who paint the whole, it stopped happening in the 70s or 80s. It's like, no, it's still happening. People are still getting fingered. They're getting screwed over, because they don't make much per play. I mean, it's minuscule on Apple, on Spotify, on any of these streaming services. So they did covers of other songs, so you already got to split the bill for that if you're doing a cover of Soundgarden or Smashing Pumpkins. So yeah, and I think that we all know, just like in the movie world, right? Movie theaters make their money on concessions, not on ticket sales. Musicians make their money on tours, not from putting their music on Spotify, right? Exactly. That's an accident. So like your point, as soon as the tours dry up because of COVID and whatever reasons, they're not left much, right? So
It's
in
a
those
two-way field. And
right,
if both
Spotify,
are-
Apple, they're built to make their own money. They don't really, I mean, they say they care about other bands and they care enough to know they need them to be able to sustain their model, but the profit share is going to them, not to those bands.
Mhm.
So the I saw the comparison at one point of like per site what percentage goes, and they're all a little bit different from each other. So
Does it seem like they make less than what they would make from a radio play where they get like $5 for the day or something like that?
I think it's tiny, man. It's like a fraction of a penny every time there's a play.
Oh my God.
Like it's really, really small. So
Corporate
they
America,
they have
baby.
to have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of plays to really make any legitimate money on that, on those platforms. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how the tide of the music industry shifts with everybody having one of these services and live shows maybe not being what they were before, now that we're in a COVID conscious world and people not as willing to go to shows. But at the same time, people might be itching to go to shows because they've been inside for 2 years. So
I would hope, but we'll see.
I saw Wild Rivers last Saturday here in Indianapolis, and it was sold out. It's packed. My friend couldn't even get a ticket to it. It was that packed. And it's a small venue. It was a great show. It was awesome, but man, it was a lot of people packed into one little room. I was like, man, this is a super spreader event if I've ever seen one. Holy moly!
That is insane.
So I think people want it. People want to get back out and see concerts. So I think the next couple of years will be fine. It's just a matter of how it kind of plays out and evens out in the long run. I don't know,
Inside versus outside. I definitely think outside will sell better.
Yep. The lawn seat kind of situation. I think getting into the summer when it starts to get warmer, I think it'll blow up this summer wherever people are playing at, as long as the next variant doesn't come in and wreak havoc after Omicron, which it will. The flu we're dealing with to this day is a variant of like the 1918 flu or something like that. So, like we're stuck with this for a long time, Cam.
I gave up my future last year, so
right. So as we La Gargola, they get the Loudwire Music Award noms, right? Different
Best
sound,
basis
much
for Dean, baby. Yeah,
much heavier than some of the early stuff they had done. I mean, hats off to the Bulls started to get them to that, but La Gargola went up, and then the North Corridor also very heavy. 2016. That's my least favorite Chevelle album. There's only a couple songs. Door to Door Cannibals is pretty good. Joyride's decent. Young Wicked and Rivers are okay, but in terms of playability, that's the last album I would touch from Chevelle. It's just nothing remarkable about it.
At that point, it was pretty much just like, hey, glad you guys are still working, but I just can't tell you apart from the other competition or oversaturated market. It's just, and I get it. You got to make a living, and you also got to sometimes you're required to do a trend that's popular, even though it's just far from what you were all about. So it's a tough scramble, but yeah, I'm with you. It's like, even though it starts kind of fading out near the end of their albums, it's also they still have some bangers here and there, and anything that their heart probably wasn't in is hardly as offensive as other bands who, there's no Guns N' Roses Chinese Democracy equivalent on any of their material.
And remember, for context, it's hard to stay relevant for 2-3 decades, right? Because we're looking at this group 99 to 2021, right? That's over 4 different decades they've produced music. It's hard to stay relevant for a decade, let alone 4. So, I give them a little bit of leeway with some of the stuff in the 2010s because there's a few bangers. Take Out the Gunman, An Island, Face to the Floor, Same Old Trip. But the consistency across the board isn't there because we're so used to a certain sound early in their career. What's so cool about them, and I think to your point, North Corridor comes out in 2016. Pretty unremarkable. Myself as a lifelong fan, didn't really get into it, and I kind of forgot about them for a little bit. Their stuff will come on my shuffle every once in a while, and I listen to it. And
I heard Joyride, and I was just like, okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's not awful, but it's not. I just didn't think about it afterwards, and
it wasn't something you were going to go out of your way to go listen to again, right? It was okay because you liked Chevelle and you liked their sound, but just not the type of sound you're looking for. Now, what's super fascinating is we've all kind of forgot about them, right? And then they released their album in 2021. I really didn't even know about it until you and I started talking about the prospect of doing this. And then I started peeking around on YouTube, and I started seeing people reacting to the songs from their album. And what I've noticed, I watch a lot of online reactions. A lot of YouTubers will react to songs recommended by other people. So there's got to be that awareness from the fans to say, hey, this is unique enough to deserve a reaction. And there are certain songs in the zeitgeist where that happens all the time. They've got this latest album that came out in early 2021, I think just rejuvenated the Chevelle brand and brought them to a whole new level that they weren't at before. When I look at my favorite albums from them, Vanessa is number one, and then Wonder What's Next is number two, just because of kind of becoming a fan and that how many good tunes. Nereatis is number three, man. It's right there out of 9. And that's impressive to say, 99 to 2021, all these years 100%. Later. And that it would be in the top 3. But for me, it is. It's musically mature. It's got the melody that kind of brought them back to their early roots. And it's something musicians can appreciate and respect. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And critics weren't too kind to it, but I think the audience has spoken, like you say. It's just, It was a whole different echo. I mean, because like you say, the Sci-Fi Crimes was kind of their warm-up, but this was like the better executed one. And other than that all music critic, I haven't seen anyone else bitch about Dean leaving. And I'm like, well, I'm sure he'll be in a reunion tour. It's gonna happen. Someone's gonna get replaced eventually. So
their bassist.
Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah, and I mean, if it's a rotating bassist like that over the years too, and they don't even, they fancy themselves a 3-part band, I'm like, all right, whoever does it, I don't care. You know what I mean?
Get it done.
Just get somebody in there that could do the job, right? I'm not here to overshadow how difficult the bass is. I know it's a very challenging instrument to play, and they have a musical arrangement that seems to really put it at the forefront. But
100%.
People go for his lyrics, their riffs, and and the vibe that they give, because they have just a very particular vibe.
100%. And so this was distributed by Epic, which is a division of Sony.
Oh, really? Okay.
So do you think Sony was part of that screw over? Because I've heard mixed bags on them. Like, I know Weird Al basically bought his catalog back from him, so he makes money versus they make money. But
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest bit, especially if there's documented issues with other acts like Weird Al. It's pretty big. Like, if you're screwing over Weird Al, there's a major problem there.
It's already wrong sauce, but yeah.
Like, come on, what are we doing here? Pick on the little guy, not the big guy. That's not going to bring you a lot of good back. And I'm reading through the album on Wikipedia here, just trying to get an idea if there's other pieces to it. That
is a great album design, isn't it? It's by Boris Vallejo.
It's very cool. And for those listening that don't know what the album means, it's an acronym. It's Nothing Is Real, and This Is a Simulation.
It's a hologram.
which I love. Yeah, exactly. It's super cool. I like and I can't tell them no to this whole like glitch in the Matrix world we live in right now. So
okay, because why? Yeah,
it's perfectly fine given everything that's going on right now. So looks like they started recording in 2019, released it in 2021, so maybe like a year and a half to get in there. But you can see it kind of lines up with the producer saying, challenge the band to write more melodic songs as opposed to the darker and heavier material from the past 2 albums. Because I think they saw a big drop in their fan base or people caring because they went away from that melodic bag.
This was make it or break it. Is like, okay, win them back or hang it up and go on to someone else. And, who wants to dissolve their brand, that they've worked so hard the last 2 decades,
I love that point, because at that point, right, like, you have to respect your fans enough to say they're going to spend their time to listen to music very strategically and intentionally. And if we haven't produced anything in 5 years, and we really haven't produced anything of legitimate substance in 7 years, you better come with the fire. You better come with the heat. Robinson. Right? Because if you don't, their patience is going to run thin. They're going to be like, all right, Chevelle's washed up. Like they were a great band in the 2000s, and we've moved on since then. But I got to give them credit. Not a lot of bands have been able to come out with something that kind of reinvents their sound, but brings it back to their roots in a way that people generally like. But
much like we couldn't predict the internet, we also couldn't predict how cruel social media could be. And so it's like, yeah, people have no problem being blunt or trolling. Oh, what a group of has-beens. And it's like the last thing you need to do is respond to, again, angry fan mail and all that. So
and it looks like on the charts, Nereatus was number 1 on the U.S. top rock albums, top hard rock albums, and top alternative albums. 68th in Canadian albums. Those damn Canadians, get your act together.
The Canucks approve.
So it looks like they peaked at 1 several times on multiple boards. So it was pretty popular. I really missed the ball on it. And that's because I was so disillusioned to Chevelle by 2016, 2017. I was like, I don't know. They'll never make anything of substance that I like again.
I just forgot about it. And it's not because I wanted to forget about it. It's just that there was just so many other just bigger and better things. And again, there were just so many other bands who were still staying relevant. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, they just kind of faded into the foreground there for a minute and then just said, okay. Yeah, this to them, I guess the best contrast I would say is the comparison would be it was a workout and they just said, no, it's finally time to get it done. Let's get to the next level. Let's lift the next set of weights. Let's go to a whole different set.
Hey, and I'll give them credit. There's a lot of bands from that 2000s cock rock, new metal era that have fizzled out, that are working the fair circuit, right? Maybe putting out music. Like I think of a group like Shinedown. Like I just don't see them as relevant anymore.
I can't remember the last time I listened to it. It's just one of those, I'm listening to stuff from 2 decades ago still. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, what happened. So
like a lot of those bands, Buck Cherry fizzled out. Like, do you think of all the bands from that scene that no longer perform? Like Power Man 5000 is not doing work anymore. Like,
no.
Or if they are, I have no clue, right? So
yeah,
there's not many that have been able to stay relevant. And I think it's really interesting to see them put out this album and give a resurgence and maybe find some new Chevelle fans in the mix.
Yeah, you don't know how many of them were talented, but they had zero idea of how the industry worked versus ego fest versus just saying, no, I'm done. That's all I got in me. I just got nothing else to offer. And going on vacation.
And the thing is, they can keep doing live shows for a long time because even though some of their albums weren't as well received as others, they still had, as you pointed out, 1 or 2 bangers from every album except for the North Corridor and Point Number 1 just being their first band. But the other 7 have at least a couple bangers on each album that are friendly to an audience, right? So you could still go listen to them sing Take Out the Gunman, Jars, Face to the Floor, like some of the stuff from the 2010s that I still enjoy, right? They put on Same Old Trip, I'm in, right? May not love Hats Off to the Bull, might not be their best album, but there's some good tunes on that album. So the Meddler is pretty good, right? Like if that comes on, I'm down with it.
Well, and like you heavily mentioned, there's only like maybe 4 or 5 songs that are just for general radio audience versus, but most of it is we wanted to do this kind of song,
Yep. Which I appreciate. I look for bands that don't have huge commercial appeal because that probably tells me that they stick a little bit more to their original ingenuity, and they're not writing radio plays to write radio plays, right? Like I look at a band, I know I mentioned Alter Bridge multiple times, but Alter Bridge is huge overseas. In Europe, they're massive. In the United States, they never really got to that level, which I like. It makes me feel exclusive because I'm like, oh, I love Alter Bridge. And they do have some radio-friendly tunes, but a lot of their stuff is like 8 minutes long. It's never going to get played on the radio. And I love it. Good.
100%. And
the rest of the world will figure it out eventually.
You never got a sense that they were forced to go into their studio at gunpoint and write something they had zero desire to perform.
Nope. And then, they recognize we're not going to make buku. We'll make a good living. We'll make a decent amount of money doing what we're doing, but we're not going to sacrifice our artistry to do it. And I respect bands that are willing to do that. And I think Chevelle has been one that, for the most part, has done that and has tried to do some experimenting and do some different things, and then keep themselves relevant. 23, 22 years after their first album, and that's impressive. They're still doing the work. I'm excited to talk System of a Down with you next because I mean, talk about just what a fascinating career and what they brought you, and oh man, that's gonna be such a cool conversation.
Oh, totally. Because we were talking just non-ending bangers with this group, and System of a Down is just total, just like hard to classify. Just very manic.
They created their own sound, man. Those Armenian guys. I'll save my thoughts, but almost every song from System of a Down is a banger to their sample tracks and things like that. So I'll save my thoughts on that. It's a top 3 band for me all time for a reason, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
100%. I can't wait either. So
let me give you, before we wrap it up, can I give you my definitive Chevelle depth chart on the albums?
Well, whatever one you recommend first. Yeah. Well, what are your top 5 tracks?
So I'll go 9 to 1. How about that? I'll give you worst to best.
Even better. Okay.
So I'm not going to include the live stuff like 12 Bloody Spies, but
or remixes or covers.
Yeah, none of that.
That's too much.
It's fine, but I don't want to count that in because then it gets muddled. So I'll say number 9, North Corridor, so least favorite. Point number 1, even though North Corridor has more songs I would listen to, I got to give point number 1 a little bit of credit as being their first album, very raw. And so I don't want to give them too much of a knock because they're still figuring it out. So that's number 8 for me. Then Sci-Fi Crimes at 7. La Gargola at 6. I have This Type of Thinking Could Do Us In at 5. Even I originally had it higher, but for other reasons, I moved others up. 4, I have Hats Off to the Bull. I think it's heavy. It's melodic. It's right at about the time when they start to shift, but I think it's still a pretty good album, top to bottom. Nereatus, I have 3. Wonder What's Next, 2. And then Vena Sarah, number 1.
Woo! Alrighty.
That's my list.
Kyle has spoken.
Into it.
Definitely check out most of their albums. Just some of the in-between ones, in between 2011 and 2021, you can probably pass over. No need. It's just, it was the recharging phase, so to speak. So, but yeah, great group to cover. Just a lot of remarkable work in between the ones that were just kind of meh and just very just non-ending just energy, which is just always a plus in any hard rock band. And Kyle, thank you so much for owning this session, and let's plug your excellent acting podcast.
Oh yeah. Everybody, if first time you've heard me and you're like, oh, this guy must talk music. Not really. I mean,
how does anyone talk about this?
I just do a bunch of research before I get on to talk
Actor
about
turned singers.
Yeah, we're doing those things. We may announce one tomorrow that we're covering. So I am the host of Munsons at the Movies. It is a bi-weekly podcast where we take a massive list of like 875 actors from all generations and backgrounds. We auto-generate 5 of those randomly, and then we spin a wheel and we cover the career and life of whatever actor the wheel decides. And so we spend a couple weeks watching all their stuff, learning about their lives, learning about the drama, the tea that they might have off screen, their, if they annoyed people, and then, we're digging into what we like, what we don't like about their performances. And so on the show, we do a full review. We cover 5 main reviews: first major film, highest critic, lowest critic, largest audience gap, and largest critic gap. And then we tie that in with all the different things we found interesting about them. Bring on guests like Cam. Bring in perspective. Cam has been on twice. He was there for our Dennis Haysbert and what was the first episode?
Keith David.
And Keith David. You can tell he's got an affection for African American cult actors, apparently.
No, it's all good. I've still dug your recent ones on Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz, and because
we've been doing some more popcorn ones lately. The wheel has been bringing us popcorn actors.
But you guys still you do even just more. You'll find even signature stuff that no one's gonna find on Wikipedia or IMDb. Is like, I wonder, they said in this interview, I wonder if this is why they took this role. And so you get to kind of build up some theories based on the line of work you're seeing and underseeing material, and seeing whether it's just a diamond in the rough or just another oddity in their career to avoid. And it really is quite kind of cool because at the end of the day, you get bragging rights. So we're super fans, you know. of the person
Exactly.
who-
Like everybody we cover, we've done the deep dive, and we can say we probably know much more than the average person about
So
this.
and so never did this role. Oh yes, they did. They got 5 of them. What are you talking about?
like the deep cuts, you know, on the Cameron Diaz episode, like learning that she was originally going to be Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat, and she was training and then broke her wrist. Like those are the types of things that I would have never known if we didn't dig into this. And you wonder, like, what would have been different if that was the case. If she
While
had a stronger
listening
wrist.
to it, I constantly thought back to her Inside the Actors Studio episode, and it was just one of those, like, I'll put on the party girl attitude because that's what I'm getting cast as, and that's me. And then the rest of the time, I'm just going to do surprise. Surprise is the best element of acting.
Yep. So that's what's cool about it. We do the deep cuts. We look at their early work. We get a better idea of, like, did they come from humble origins? Like Jim Carrey hustled for everything he had versus some actors are born into, you know, Hollywood royalty and kind of chart their path from there. We rate them all on our Munson meter scale of 0 to 100. And then we kind of celebrate them. And we have great guests like Cam who come in and bring a variety of perspectives. We have folks who work in the industry, used to work in the industry, bloggers, other podcasters, friends.
The many background talents you had were just so great because they either had a personal connection or they were pretty much just verifying some of the trivia on certain movies. You're like, do you think something like this would have happened? You're like, yeah, pretty possible. It's more commonly happens than this or that. It's like that's awesome.
Our latest guest, Laura Beneke, who's been on a few times before, she just joined us, and she used to work as an actress in casting, and so she gives really cool personal stories about the actors we're talking about or the projects.
Oh yeah,
so
and
it's just really fun.
It was material that, I mean, it also just kind of irks one when you see like how-to ones on like something like Indie Film Hustle or some of those actors access, and it's like, yeah, but those are barely even, you know, scraping the tip of the iceberg. It's barely getting into focus on what people do. It's like, and you guys are going back into the more of the, what do you think the character backstory was this? What was the motivation on set versus what you heard about? It's all very constructive, and we need more podcasts like this because there's just too many that rant, and it's a turnoff. So
yeah, and we heavily edit our pod, so you know most of our episodes are about an hour and a half to hour and 40 minutes long because we want to do the full. We want to tell the full story.
May contain shameless promotion of OnlyFans, but no, can't confirm or deny.
We talk about a lot of random stuff. That you can find us on Twitter, Munsons at Movies. We're on Instagram, Munsons at the Movies. Interact with us.
Oh man,
let us know your favorite performances from an actor, and we may or may not mention that on the episode. Follow us, give us a follow. We love it.
The wheel decides.
The wheel decides. That's right. The wheel decides.
The wheel decides.
But I appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is always a great time, Cam, even if it's not in my normal movie bag, like getting a chance to talk about some bands and do the research and pull in some expertise from others. It's just such a fun process. And I like revisiting bands like this that I've been a fan of for 25 years and
100%.
How do they stand up over time?
Absolutely. The motivation was to kind of go into a bit of music history just on the side, as opposed to just, oh my God, I love that film composer. It's like, yeah, well, which one or why? Yeah.
I can't believe it's been an hour. We've been talking for like 55 minutes. It's wild.
Yeah. Acing it, baby. Acing
we
it.
have.
We'll return after these messages.
JRS Podcast is proud to promote AutoCorrect, an independent film company with experienced industry professionals who can serve all your film industry needs. They include self-tapes, voice actor recordings, demo reel editing, script revisions, headshots, and much more. They're Actor Correct at your request. Book them on Instagram.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
Greetings, friends. My name is Dean Legero, and I'm the host of the 3324 podcast. I invite you to join me and my lifelong friend Eric Huber to come with us as we discuss the music and movies that shaped our life. Each week, we'll pick an album or film that we really connect to, and not only give you some great info and trivia, but also discuss, debate, and celebrate what it means to us and the journey it took us on. We also look forward to hearing from you and giving us some of your picks for us to check out and discuss. I think it'll be a really fun experience, so come along with us for the ride. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider and at 3324.buzzsprout.com. Thanks for your time, and welcome to the 3324 family.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot, holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.